There are some very interesting constraints I was going to, or
Yeah,
principles at work. The game, in my opinion, offers certain aesthetic
yeah,
cues and even moral cues. Some of them are very explicit, like you actually have to make the Dark Master do things you think are bad, which if you started to sympathize with the wronged nymph, you have to kind of remember, no, wait, no, wait, she's not just a wronged nymph. This is something
yes.
terrible has happened and is happening. So that's a little tricky. If I find myself getting too sympathetic toward the Dark Master, I discover that my commands start feeling more and more justified,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so that's why I was a little worried. I was like, if he's going to make me just go after Ikarios, then this becomes, less, more of
Yeah.
a wronged girl god. Well, I mean, there's lots
Yep.
of I might sympathize with a wronged girl god, right?
Yeah.
So, but making me go after the crowd makes a lot more sense, right? She's gone bonkers. So,
And she knows she's not immortal anymore, so
right,
these offerings and sacrifices
and
don't mean
so
anything to her.
what you
Yeah.
have now is this other question though. What about our respective responses to those aesthetic and moral cues? Because they won't have any meaning unless we bring our meanings to them.
Hmm.
We actually have to step up to that. It's one of the things I like
Yeah.
best about the game. If you don't step up to where you stand relative, and
Yeah.
it's basically he hasn't given you a hat to wear or an empty cup just to fill.
Yeah.
He has set a high bar,
Yeah.
and you have to meet that bar. And in my case, I struggled against writing a back history novel.
Yep. Yeah.
I
It
realized
would
I
be
was
so easy.
much better off only working with the snippets of memory, and whatever
Yeah.
filled them in, I just don't know. And
Hmm.
I'm not only does the cold soldier not know, but maybe I'm better off not knowing and not building, and not saying Noah, Noah, see what happens,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
I mean, and not doing that necessarily. I mean, that's why partly I was glad that there's no capacity to remember in that final scene
Hmm. Yes.
more than the absolute necessity of just naming a regret.
Yeah.
Um,
Because you have to
because I
work with
we don't really know,
what you
like,
have.
why was I sacrificed to Athena, or what did they do that injured the
Yeah.
standing or the pride or whatever of the nymph, and why did that? We don't know.
Yeah, and I don't. I mean, I have a vague idea with the
Right?
agenda, but I wanted to play it loose.
Yeah.
It seems like it's what I had was a very. I have three people. You know, the bride to be, first victim, aged father, and Icarius, so and the nymph. You know, and then
Hmm.
uh, I think keeping a light hand on that backstory because you know it's going to get bounced with the memories. You
Right.
know.
Right. So it's definitely yeah, exactly, because now we know that he had apparently was going to be for this nymph instead, but we
Yeah.
really don't know anything else.
We.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so therefore, I realized that I think it was about the point when I had been roaming around like killing vagrants and stuff and came
Yeah.
back, and defied her. I was thinking, okay, well, there is a defiance here. And I found that right at that moment, because of the assertiveness, the proactivity of the cold soldier, I was tempted to start, writing all about him.
Hmm. Oh yeah. Yep.
And at that point, I had to really put on the brakes. And every single turn, up until the last one, even, I you can see me going, stop that, and say something really basic instead, because all
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
ideas, right. And so it's useful it's a good game for reminding you not to write,
hmm
which I think is important.
And
So
and
anyway,
I actually think
yeah.
Gene Wolfe was an appropriate
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
tutelary god on that.
I actually
He's not.
really
Yeah.
liked both Soldier of Arate and Soldier of the Mist and Soldier of Arate. I liked them both.
Yeah.
I I have not read the third one, which I understand has been unearthed in manuscript and perhaps published posthumously.
Yeah. I believe so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have not read that. And I met Wolf a few times when I was in Chicago.
Cool.
He gave a talk at a library, and he was super freaking nice to science fiction fans.
Oh.
So the one time I went to a science fiction convention with some friends, he was there.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and I talked to him both times, and not for very long. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't too profound.